It's that time of the day. The GB News pub has been declared open. It is Talking Pints. Now, before I introduce my guest this evening, I was at the osteopath's the other day, and he was chatting to me. He said, do you know, he said, I had a patient the other day who said they were a blogger. What's a blogger? Well, today I've got somebody who's a blogger, a creator. I don't know. He may even be an influencer for all I know, but I'm joined by Mahyar Tousi. Mahyar, welcome.
Welcome. Is it too late to say Merry Christmas or...?
Well, I know it's never too late to say that. And let's hope for a better 22.
Absolutely.
So, Mahyar, before we get to this bizarre world, I say bizarre, actually, to your generation and younger, this is just how they live, it's what they understand, and it influences the clothes people buy, it influences how people vote, it influences what books they read, in absolutely every way, and it's growing and growing and growing. But there are some censorship threats, and we'll talk about that too. But firstly, you are one of the youngest people I've had on Talking Pints. Your background is fascinating. Born in Iran.
Yes, in Tehran, capital,
Which once was a great country.
Yeah, used to be a secular, free market capitalist country with constitutional monarchy. Obviously, some flaws. It wasn't a perfect system, but everything changed. And since then, my parents' family got into trouble.
Yes.
My mother had to come here as a political refugee, a proper political refugee. And then I came as a kid. Of course, under 18, I was allowed to basically come after.
So you're
join her.
So you are effectively a political refugee.
Technically, I can't take too much credit because I was a child of a.
You were a
refugee.
minor.
But yeah, technically speaking, I didn't go through the process because obviously my mum had to kind of explain the case and everything else. But I came here.
And you can't go back to Iran. You've been cancelled, I believe.
I have been cancelled by Iran. Yes, I'm not allowed to go back, and partly, the obvious reason that obviously we are here, but also because I'm active in politics and media.
Yes.
They believe that apparently they called me an MI6 Tory agent, because if you're a Tory, back in the day when I was part of the Tory party, you're definitely an MI6 agent. It goes hand in hand, clearly.
Well, they're probably right for all we know.
I mean, I can't really say if it is, even if it's true. I can't say.
So your family have benefited, you've benefited, as a result that we've been a country that for centuries, and nobody in Europe dares talk to us about this, over centuries we have actually offered genuine refugee status to lots of people. When you see what's happening in the English Channel right now, how do we deal with that?
Well, it's tricky, but in terms of before even dealing with it, one of the interesting things I've discovered, because obviously on YouTube I make videos about it, and on Twitter a lot of people attack me. A lot of the so-called kind of white liberal lefties who tell me that, why are you complaining? These people look like you, so you should support them. You should just bring everybody here.
Isn't racism a funny thing?
It's funny, yeah. The interesting thing is that they say, well, it's the likes of Nigel Farage that should complain. They complain, the white native English. Well, actually, it's mostly the proper integrated refugees and migrants who are here, including first wave. These are the people who are complaining more about the illegal migrants. You just don't hear about it, of course. They're part of the silent majority. They don't really go on TV. They don't get invited by BBC or Sky to go on TV and talk about how, as a legal migrant, I don't like illegal migration. But it's true.
Now, I'm interested, you came and lived in South London, Lewisham, you grew up, and I'm interested in your political epiphany. Obviously being directed towards the Labour Party, because kind of Lewisham's a Labour area, and I've no doubt at school, etc., there were influences perhaps sending you in that direction. So tell me what happened with your engagement with the Labour Party.
I do believe that growing up in Lewisham, that made me not be Labour, because the pressure, the mob rule mentality, the peer pressure that they said, well, this is the Labour heartland. And obviously I came from an ordinary middle-class family in Iran. Yeah. So that meant good education, but that also meant when we came here, ended up in a council state, which was a bit of a culture shock, but kind of more regressive. So I was like, oh, this is interesting, so I'm going to get used to a new environment. But everything I saw, for me and my family, we were just happy that we're embracing this new culture because they gave us a fresh chance, a fresh start. Everybody in the neighbourhood, well, as a whole, were complaining, saying this is the worst country in the world, we're all dying, this is the end of the world as we know it. And everybody was just complaining and complaining and complaining. And people like my family, this type of, if you want to call them migrants or refugees or just humans, we don't see ourselves as victims. Everything is an opportunity. Even if you're at the bottom, when they're coming here, starting, fresh on a council estate, I had to do everything from scratch. But I didn't complain. I didn't believe that, well, the bankers are rich, so I'm not going to get rich. But I got out of it. But that made me realize that it was always inside me, the kind of the free market capitalist side of me, that kind of believe in, but also in terms of embracing the British culture and being proud of being British.
Yeah, I mean, look, actually, to be fair to the Labour Party, for much of its history, it was a very patriotic political party. And one of the reasons it's gone wrong and lost that northern wall is it lost that connection. It kind of lost its way with patriotism, with border controls, with things like that. So as a free market conservative, and now somebody who is a political creator,
YouTuber.
You're a YouTuber. You are a YouTuber.
Yeah.
So come on, explain to an audience who may not understand this.
Yeah.
What do you do for a living, Mahyar Tousi?
Apparently it's a job. A lot of people in my family still don't believe it. Like that. You can't make money, right?
So come on, what do you do?
Essentially, it is it's an online
And why do you
channel.
do it? And why do you do it?
But that's the thing. Like yourself, and people like yourself, that you kind of focused on the political left behind. I discovered the last couple of years ago, that there is also such thing as media left behind, in terms of the left behind who are also being let down by the mainstream media, the old kind of legacy types of channels. And it was the height of Brexit negotiation, it was Theresa May. And I just randomly started, I was getting frustrated with everything that we were getting from the news. So I just decided to make videos to kind of simplify things and kind of make things more easier to kind of just relate to, and give the facts, but be open to people about my own biases and say, so these are the facts, this is my opinion, now form your own view. And it took off, and people actually then stopped watching your legacy channels, and there was a gap in the market. And this is obviously before GBNews, obviously, they broke through, and there's a revolution now. But that became the go-to source for a lot of people around the country. I got more views than certain other channels, the legacy channels.
You've got about 250,000 people that follow you on YouTube, and you've had over 100 million video views, which is a big number. So can a person like you earn a good living doing that?
Yes, it's possible. It's it feels like we're going to have to release my tax. No, is there?
No, because there are a lot of people out there now, not necessarily in politics, but in fashion, in art, in all of these things. There are a lot of people out there who are, it seems, earning their living. You get by, you do okay doing this.
Yes, but I have had my issues with YouTube as well, quite recently, because whilst we complain, people like me, the alternative media guys, that they're all Ofcom and all the kind of, there are a lot of restrictions with kind of the real world. Yeah. YouTube, they have massive restrictions. So if you say the wrong thing accidentally, or it comes out the wrong way, the system, the kind of the AI that they have, and also the people who actually monitor it, they could bring you down any moment. The channel could go, and there was a period quite recently where my channel got hit. And so, while it could be good, the good days I could make a lot of money and I could actually influence people, actually give them what they want to hear, but it could go away any moment. It could get cancelled.
This is the scary thing, isn't it? Because, and I was talking about this with our guest from Hong Kong Watch earlier. When social media first arrived, it was liberating because it was a way of getting round the back of what the mainstream wanted to present, going directly to people. And I don't think the political revolution of 2016 could have happened without social media. Yep. In my case, it was YouTube.
Yes.
It was my speeches in the European Parliament, reaching a big audience in Britain. Suddenly people knew, walking down the street, who I was. That's what did it for me. For Trump, it was Twitter. Yeah. Direct communication out to 50, 60, 70 million Americans. It didn't matter what CNN said. He was having that direct conversation. And it almost seems to me that the people that created this stuff on the west coast of America suddenly became horrified about what the impact of it had been. And we now see Trump himself, of course, is banned. You're kind of saying that, in a sense, you have to be careful about individual words because they're the triggers. I mean, where are we going with this?
It is tricky. You mentioned 2016 and yourself in terms of the platform you got and Trump with Twitter. There was also another one, Arab Spring. The Egyptian protest and revolution actually happened on Facebook. Yeah. It was because of Facebook organising the groups and events and things like that. So it's been happening for a few years. Where we go now, and you're absolutely right that, for example, the big tech kind of liberal left establishment, they realised, we created a good thing, but we're actually also giving a kind of chance to our opponents, people we don't like, to be empowered. And now they're freaking out. It's sort of like what the CCP would do in China, where like the Chinese Communist Party will want to control things. But that makes more sense. They're communist and authoritarian. Why are the kind of so-called liberal, big tech, open and kind of tolerant society that we have, they want to shut down someone like me or yourself or Trump on Twitter? You mentioned words. You can't say COVID. When COVID started, the first lockdown, I couldn't use the word COVID. I had to say the health crisis or the lockdown situation.
Really?
You can't say certain words, you just get demonetized. You can't say war. Even if you say, I hate war, the context doesn't matter. So you have to use, there was a video I did, it was about, obviously, it was a context about Germany, Second World War. So I had to say, what happened in Germany back in the 1940s and when they got rid of their tyrant? I couldn't say certain words. I couldn't even say Hitler. Yeah. So that's where we are.
Are there going to be other companies that come along and start to provide alternatives? I mean, there are one or two that are trying, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think there are like alternatives to Twitter. There's like a new app called Getter.
Getter, Parler, got Rumble. There are attempts being made.
The problem is, so some of them have already failed, and some of them actually still going really well. I think the way you kind of counter it, and for example, the new apps like Getter, getting it right, is you can't sell yourself as the right-wing version of Twitter or right-wing version of YouTube, because accidentally you will create an echo chamber. It has to be sold as we are basically going to be the alternative mainstream.
A bit like the Brexit vote.
Basically.
Well, yeah, but it brought in millions of Labour voters that most people in London didn't really understand. You were a member of the Conservative Party.
Not anymore.
You believe in free markets.
Yep.
You believe in aspiration. You believe in low tax. He sounds like Boris's nightmare, doesn't he, really? So when did you leave?
I used to be an active member for about 10 years ago. I joined, and
you stood as a candidate.
Yeah, kind of classic student activist. Local members, stood as council candidates, and as a young kind of politico and Tory, you think, well, the only route is I should become an MP. Then I worked in Parliament for a bit, and Westminster, and I realised, yeah, that's not a good idea. When you see what happened in the bubble, firstly, there's no money. There's no actual influence unless you become really prime minister, and because you could have influence depending on what you are and what you're about. For example, Steve Baker, Mark Harper, these guys like backbenchers, they have influence for certain areas as campaigns. But I got out because I realised I'm just getting too old for that. I'm not going to just keep waiting and waiting for something that, because I kept seeing a lot of my friends who thought that the only way you could actually influence in terms of world and politics and everything else is party. You don't have to.
No, there are lots and lots of ways.
Yeah, media is...
So how do you feel about the party now, the direction it's taking?
The problem I have with the party is not necessarily just the fault is like Boris Johnson's leadership is like not going well or their policies. That's clearly a problem now. But there's a deeper problem with the whole system, from Tory HQ to the culture of Toryism. The one thing they will credit to the Tories, the whole party is based on just survival and winning and kind of maintaining power.
And adapting.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes they have to then do the right things to win. For example, they eventually had to get Brexit done.
Yeah, they had to. They were very reluctant.
But that was thanks to a different political party that was created to push for that.
if they hadn't done that, the Brexit party could have won the next election, and they weren't going to allow that. Mahyar, finally, a message, please, to youngsters watching this who fancy their chances as being YouTubers, creators. How do they start?
Don't do it. don't aim for it. It's just one of those things where you can't really plan it. Mine was very accidental. But they should definitely... I would encourage attempts to get your voices heard. Because obviously my platform is to give some sort of voice to people who are not being heard. But I want to encourage other people to tweet more, write more blogs. And even if only a few people read it or watch YouTube videos, still do it. Because we need the silent majority to actually stop being silent, basically. On that note, and one that I absolutely concur with, because when the silent majority spoke in 2016, look what the result was. That was Mahyar Tousi on Talking Pints. And thank you for coming in.